Ohio State had a fitting, touching tribute to Dwayne Haskins.
Yeah.
As part of this game. They had the video. C.J. Stroud wore his number. There were decals on the helmets. I thought it was a nice tribute after the untimely passing of Dwayne Haskins, a longtime fan favorite.
Yeah.
So hard to kind of watch that, but at the same time, I thought a nice move from the Ohio State University to honor Dwayne Haskins. Hard to come away too disappointed as an Ohio State fan, unless you were expecting to see star power on display in the Ohio State spring game, right?
Yeah.
C.J. Stroud played 5 drives.
Great.
That was it. Then they pulled the plug. Guys like Travion Henderson and Jackson Smith-Njigba played even less. Trey Henderson played 7 snaps. JSN played 16 snaps.
Perfect. Great.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. You don't want those guys getting hurt. They're the foundation of your team, of your offense. Yeah. Great. For what it's worth, Ryan Day seemed very pleased with himself, was very happy with what he saw. The sense that I get from watching the highlights, from reading commentary on blogs, and then from looking at coaches' comments after the game, even the blurry parts for Ohio State are mostly in focus, which is a great place to be when it's May, right? Even the blurry parts seem in focus. For example, they just lost on back-to-back picks, on picks 10 and 11, 204 targets in the form of Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, who were first-round draft picks into the NFL. For most teams, that's a catastrophe. To lose that, first off, most teams don't have that level of receiver in their receiving room to begin with.
Correct.
On top of JSN. But to lose that kind of production, it's like, that's all we're talking about in the offseason.
Yeah.
Not really the case for Ohio State.
No.
It's a concern. It's a concern. Hell, look at Bama. It's more of a concern for them. But if you look at where Ohio State's at, they're just sort of going to roll with Marvin Harrison Jr. They feel confident that he's going to be their guy. Emeka Egbuka.
Yep, both made plays in the Rose Bowl against Utah. Yeah.
It factors in that he's probably going to be the number 2 or number 3, depending on how you categorize it, because they're probably still going to play JSN in the slot, right? Like, it could be him, it could be Julian Fleming, but they just have guys. And it's sort of that next man up mentality that I think gives them a great deal of confidence. Yep. They feel pretty good about where they're at receiver despite that loss. And it's sort of like that across the board. The first team for Ohio State is kind of set at this point.
Yeah.
So, you're coming from a really good spot if you feel like that's the case across the board. Much of the conversation post-spring game was not about, hey, who's going to be the starting whatever. It's who's going to be the number 2.
Right.
Who's going to be... Kai Stokes was great at safety. He can be the backup. He's a freshman.
Yeah.
Awesome. That was the whole conversation. And that's why I think I like Ohio State, not to get too far out over my skis here. That's why I like Ohio State to win the Big Ten. Because the conversation in May...
What a dramatic call from you.
I'm really going out on a limb, I know. The conversation is less about players and it's more about scheme.
Sure.
Because we know the first teamers. What we don't know is what's the defense totally going to look like under Jim Knowles.
Yeah.
I know what he wants to do. He said what he wants to do. He said, believe it or not, he wants to play a more aggressive brand of defense.
Have to.
Which they all say.
Yep.
Without fail. He talked a little bit about wanting corners to play tighter, wanting them to be more aggressive, throw a couple punches, right? All the normal cliches apply.
Mm-hmm.
I guess we saw a little bit of that maybe in the spring game. We'll find out a lot more about that again once the actual football and actual season get kicked off later this year. But in terms of where the conversation's at this point, I think it's a lot around depth. They like their top line. I think they feel confident about who their starters are going to be. The Jim Knowles thing is still a little bit blurry, but for whatever it's worth, he was also pretty pleased, quote unquote, very pleased by what he saw. And that's about as enthusiastic as anybody's going to get at this juncture in spring. So Ohio State fans, I think you've got a lot to be excited about. Evan Pryor, by the way, like speaking of depth, they've already got 2 really good running backs. Evan Pryor looked awesome in this game. Now they have 3.
Yep.
Now they have 3. That's the conversation for Ohio State. It's about stacking guys on top of other guys, building depth to an unhealthy level that nobody can compete. And you have to feel good about where they're at this coming season, provided the defense takes a step forward, which I think it will.
I was going to say, if guys in that front on defense, and they got better at it over the course of the year, at least until that Michigan game, remember which gap is theirs and are able to maintain a position therein, they'll be all right. But we saw a lot exploited against Oregon. We saw a lot exploited over the course of that game against Michigan. And so with a new defensive coordinator, I know it was a new guy calling plays either after the Oregon game or shortly thereafter.
Sure.
But that's the big thing. It's just learning, applying, executing. Same goes for everybody, but it's weird to talk about Ohio State's defense, which has been one of the surest things in the sport this past decade or so, that they were a squad that struggled with that last year. That it's just, Kerry Coombs was not the long-term top-flight answer at defensive coordinator for as much as he contributed to that program, was not the long-term answer. And Jim Knowles, by every indication with what he's done recently, more specifically with fielding a top 5-6 national defense last year at Oklahoma State, should be that guy to get things organized and should be that teacher to help right the ship in Columbus.
Despite all of the hand-wringing over Ohio State's defense, their ranking as a defensive entity per the SP Plus was still 20th.
Okay.
20th in the nation. That was not without brain farts, okay? There were brain fart moments, especially in defensing the pass. The pass is where they need to get better.
Secondary fell off for sure.
Secondary fell off. But I think the larger point here for Jim Knowles, everybody wants a shutdown defense. Everybody wants that without exception.
Yeah.
Marginal improvement. Marginal improvement on the defensive side of the ball makes this team unstoppable. Unstoppable.
Yeah.
And so if he can get them there just a little bit more aggressive, they're going to have a good pass rush. That will help. Just marginal improvement, especially in that secondary, makes this team unstoppable. We'll see. Maybe I'll be wrong, but I feel pretty confident that I'm right.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of movement along in the secondary, transferring out. And I don't know if that's a numbers thing overall to get down to proper scholarship numbers, but, Marcus Hooker, Seven Banks, guys like that, have struggled these past couple of years. And it's a new era. It's a new era. And I'm seeing, by the way, 38th in defensive points allowed per drive in 2021. So by whatever metric, it definitely fell off.
It fell off. It's not the worst.
Not the worst.
Could definitely be better.